up, guys? Welcome back to Hardball Talks, the podcast all about sports, life, and the head-on collision that happens between them. I'm Jess Schmittling, and each week we dive into stories, challenges, and opportunities we experience living in the sports life arena.
Her roles are reversed this week. I am Alexa Potts, and we're going to talk a little bit about just an initiative that we just launched with our families, and Jess is going to share a little bit on that. So my turn to interview Jess. Welcome. Excited to dive in more.
Yeah, let's get this thing started.
Perfect. A priority of us is just to be leaders in the sports arena for our athletes and families, and it's a hard world to navigate. It's not easy, and we want to be a guide. And so we launched a newsletter titled Keeping Kids in the Game. So give us an overview of that.
Okay. Yeah, so Keeping Kids in the Game, we have done a couple different newsletters in the past, and we really wanted something that was going to speak to families of where they're at and then where they can find a little bit more education about us and just some of our philosophies. The honest thing is that we've been around for 25 years, so we have a lot of different philosophies that have come together through just lessons learned that we've had over those 25 years. And so I think a lot of times, our newsletters would be very much about just like athlete highlights and other types of events maybe going on with inside of the organization. We wanted this to be a little more educational about some of the philosophies and principles that we stand for.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more of a vulnerable place for us to be because it is a little more bold, if you will. And so with those 25 years of experience, I think that there's been lessons learned from good things and there's been lessons learned from the hard way. And so this one's a little bit more vulnerable. So share with us on where did this maybe come about and why specifically Keeping Kids in the Game as the title?
Yeah, I think, even the section about hot takes, there's a lot in there that it's different. And you'll see in the, there's a section in there saying swimming against the current. And that's really what we believe that we do is a lot of our philosophies, they are different. It's different than just the norm or the expectation of just the softball and baseball world in general. And so, but it's all coming and stemming from a place that we want to keep kids in the game. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of times that we look for short-term wins in this, in the arena of softball and baseball, and that ultimately leads to kids getting out of the game early because we're so focused on what we think is going to be good for them right there in the moment instead of in the long haul. And so the whole idea and the concept Keeping Kids in the Game as the title was really because we're thinking about kids being in it for the long haul and in the long term. And so, but specifically as far as how we got to the place of even doing the newsletter, Brett, the co-founder, and I were in a meeting with some families over the fall-winter time frame. And a lot of times people would say things like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or, I feel like you should share that. And so it's just,
or I didn't know that.
Right. It's like these one-off conversations kept coming up that we felt like we needed a different platform to be able to share in, a centralized place that we could get these thoughts out, we could get these ideas out. And instead of people having to tell us one-to-one that they wish they would have known that or that they didn't know that or whatever the phrase was, that we were able to kind of get it to the masses a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I think the swimming against the current, you hit on that a little bit, but I think that oftentimes it can be viewed almost as a negative when we have a different stance on things because there are some things that are a little bit more uncommon, like you said. And so I think it's trying to shed light on it. We're not trying to hide any information. So trying to share more of the why. It's important to share the why. And so being a little bit more transparent through this newsletter is a goal of ours. And the swimming against the current is just, again, it's a vulnerable place of, sometimes it feels like, we could be on an island with some of the thoughts that we have. And so I think bringing it to life with the people that are in our club and then potential new families of maybe here's a different viewpoint on this idea. Because if we don't, I think that there can be maybe assumptions that are had. And so let's dive in a little bit more to the actual newsletter. Swimming Against the Current was kind of a concept within that, but then we broke it down into kind of 3 sections, and it started with a little, hot take. Oh no, we started with dinner table conversation. So maybe before we dive into the actual questions that we had, why this section? Why dinner table conversations? What was the intent there?
They don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it where, people are running through drive-thrus and they're eating food in the car, going from one place to the next. And so sitting around the dinner table really doesn't happen. But I do think the conversations that should be happening there should still be happening. The conversation should be. And so we really wanted to provide a place for families to understand what is it that we should be talking about. Oftentimes, of course, you get the teenagers that you ask them how their day was and it's good and you just don't get a lot out of them, or how was practice if you didn't come in and watch it, that's fine, that maybe is all you get. And so giving them a platform with these questions to be able to dive in deeper with their kids, even if it isn't around the dinner table, we still want kind of that family feel of like we're on the same page, we're on the same team, we're trying to work together to be able to answer these questions and understand a little bit more about my athlete, and then the athletes be able to understand the family's viewpoint as well.
Yeah, I think the intentionality is the goal there of finding time, whether it's literally at the dinner table or in the car ride too, and having questions already there. And so I think that's important for us. So let's dive into, we had this newsletter was created, there's 3 sections and it's kind of 3, 2, 1 is the idea. So this dinner table section was the 3 questions. So question number 1, we'll just kind of overview this, why this question, why is it important to us? Are we a growth-minded family? What are some examples of how we are not? So growth-minded is a common phrase that we talk about. So maybe hit on that a little bit.
Yeah, ideally there, we're just trying to see, when you think about families that are growth-minded, they're able to see kind of that long-term concept that we were talking about. And so if people who are a little more, or less growth-minded, I would say, oftentimes will struggle inside of our organization just because of the fact that we are constantly thinking about how to evolve and just continue to pursue excellence. And so we coach very much that way. We train very much that way. And so we see the most success in families that are able to get there a little bit quicker to be those growth-minded type of families. And so we wanted to just challenge people to see if they even know that about themselves. And so if you know that you're a growth-minded family, maybe you can provide examples. Or if you've never heard that term before of growth-minded, let's talk about it. Let's understand what that even means, and then feel like, are we the type of family that is? And so hopefully if we get to the place that everyone is a growth-minded family, then the next layer of that is maybe to see, where are my goals? Where am I trying to grow? And so that we can help them stair step towards whatever, ultimately they're trying to get to.
And the growth-mindedness is kind of interesting, the tie into the swimming against the current, because if we're swimming against the current and we're not growth-minded, then I think that's where the clash happens, because it's like, well, this isn't what's normal. This isn't what everybody else does. And so the growth-mindedness, we're always trying to evolve and really, to be quite honest, be a step ahead and be relevant. Like the GIST game is grown tremendously, and since we played. And I think that part of it, that's why the growth-mindedness is important, because we do things so different. So that's good. The second question was around just the idea of, does your family take advantage of the full experience? So hit on that a little bit.
Yeah, obviously we have a lot to offer here. And so being able to make sure families even know that what's happening inside our doors. Do they know that they get a facility access pass to come in and use the facility? Do they know about the network training program? Do they know about the curriculum that their kids are getting inside of network training? Even so much down to the details of do they know what their coaches are getting? Do they know that they're getting, coach development? Do they know that they're getting one-on-one support to be able to build schedules? And so as we think about whether or not families feel like they're taking just kind of full advantage of everything that they have, we hope that they are, because then they're maximizing on the experience that they get here. And ultimately we feel like that's what keeps people here as far as their forever home, because they're able to see all of the value that is available to them. And we also know that it brings families together. Mm-hmm. So if they are in here using their facility access pass, they're spending more time together. Hopefully mom, dad, so-and-so is throwing them front toss. They're able to talk about that on the car ride home, and it promotes more of those dinner table conversations. So I think there's so many layers to that, but really that question just came from the place of do I understand the value of what I'm getting? And if not, what questions do I need to ask to make sure that I get to that place of having the value?
Yeah, and it's a true holistic experience. It's unique, truly. And I share in the previous podcast about my personal experience as a player in the organization, and that was pre this facility, that was pre network training, that was pre really coach development, that was pre everything. And I think the importance of understanding it, it's similar to anything else in life, right? If you have a gym membership that you don't use, you're not using the membership to the fullest. And so obviously there's a disconnect that happens. And I think that's why it's important for us of why are you using the full experience? Because if you're not, typically that's where we do have some disconnects with families and the value that they think they're receiving or not think that they're receiving. So great question there. And finally, the third question of this section was, in what ways have you seen your athlete grow? So just this idea of discussing with the athlete their growth and just how they've in the off season, how they've taken off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that, I think we didn't put a ceiling on this question as far as what ways have you seen them grow. Again, if maybe families aren't in here all the time watching what's happening inside a network, we of course encourage you to come and watch your athletes to do so. But even if you're not, maybe being able to have a conversation with them about how their leadership has changed. Maybe they have some more responsibilities that you're seeing at home. And so I think just maybe there's more joy around the sport. I don't want to limit people to what this answer could be inside of this question. And so really thinking about where's the growth in the off season, not just from a physical perspective, but from all dimensions inside of our program.
And I think that question is important just because if we don't take that time to reflect, I think we can just kind of mosey on of like, okay, checked it off the list. We got through network training season and not really think about, no, like, what do we get from this? Because I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual, mental, whatever it is, that there was growth. And so it's that intentional pause because this life can just keep us going, right? It's an intentional pause to really reflect on how it's going. And really good. So great questions there. Dinner table conversations, whether it's at the dinner table or it's in the car ride or whatever the case is, on the couch at night before you go to bed. Those are some great questions to ask yourselves. And now the second piece, so that was the three. The second piece would be the hot takes. And so let's hit it here. We have two of them. First one, the grass is greener where you water it. Extreme believes in a loyal approach in finding your forever home. We focus on the individual athlete through their continued growth on our development roadmap. So share on that hot take.
So the roadmap was created long before this hot take existed. But what's new this year is we kind of added the tagline Forever Home. And so with Forever Home, we're really thinking about the roadmap and we're thinking about athletes being in our program for the long haul. So on the roadmap, you'll see there's a variety of different kind of tiers within inside of our program. You kind of have the youth avenue that is a little bit more stair-stepped by the age that you are, and then you get into what's considered our elite model, where we're more so on the side of just like, where's my athlete at physically, but then also what are they striving for, what are they looking for as the future of the sport. And so it's a little bit more tiered on ability and just kind of goals there, and there's some ebb and flow that happens with inside of those different tiers. And so the roadmap really is showing that there is a place for everyone here. And so if there is a place for everyone, we have that loyal approach to our athletes, to our families, and we hope that they have the same thing back for us. And so if they're able to envision kind of their journey throughout the roadmap, then we feel like there's no need to look where the grass is maybe greener in their perceived eyes. And so they're able to stay right here at their forever home and make their journey throughout, and we'll always have a place for them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of options, if you will. And I think if you think about that phrase literally, right, it's I have a new house, and so I don't really have a lot of grass, but I have to take time to tend to it to help it grow. And so if I'm distracted by something else, it's not going to grow, and I'm not going to receive the value of that. And so I think the same thing applies here is, it's a little bit back to the dinner table conversation of, are you using this experience to its fullest, right? Because I think sometimes we can be a little 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and that's in life, right? We can be a little 1 foot out, one foot in, and I think that's where we don't experience it all the way. So
and I think with inside the roadmap too, it never says like if there's never going to be a hiccup, but if there is, it doesn't mean just go look somewhere else. It's like staying inside of the roadmap while also asking questions. If something isn't going, the way that you thought it was going to, then being able to have a place to ask those questions, kind of water the grass here, and be able to understand fully, really become an advocate inside of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, stay in it for the long haul. Trust the process. It's not perfection. It's not perfect, but I think there's 25 years of growth and learning and lessons through that. And so we will continue that for the next how many ever years as well. Let's go. So hot take number 2, burnout, which is a hot button topic. Burnout is avoidable teaching the love of the game from an early age can be sustainable when the athlete, family, and coach are working together to sustain it.
Wow. Burnout. I wholeheartedly believe this. Burnout is avoidable.
Yeah.
I think that I remember having a conversation with an athlete, and I love to tell this story as she's actually a sophomore now in college, still playing softball. But I remember her as a 15-year-old athlete sitting inside the facility with me, telling me that she was done with the game. She did not want to play anymore. And she had a couple of reasons kind of listed out there, but we worked through it. We were able to kind of really understand and dive into each one of the things that felt like a reason that was a burden or holding her back, and felt like she wasn't able to get over that hurdle, and ultimately she did. And now she's happy as can be playing in college and looking on to what the next couple of years are going to look like for her inside of the game. But I think that when you have a coach, and this athlete too had very much had a family that was on board, trusted the process, they were looking at the roadmap all the time. And so it was everybody working together. So we were able to get her over that hump. And there's so many stories like that, but there's also stories on the flip side of that where they didn't have the support system. And then ultimately the word burnout kind of gets overused in that of like, I burn out, so I'm going to, move on, or I'm going to quit, or I'm done playing. And so, you even hear it in the language of different families, and you ask, oh, she was such a great athlete. Like, what happened? Oh, she got burnt out. And it's kind of the end of the conversation. There's really no more diving in any deeper of what led to that. But we're all going to go through challenges in life, whether that's as an athlete or just literal challenges of life. And so being able to talk with athletes and talk with the families, coaches all working together, I think is where we can say that burnout is avoidable, because you're able to work through it all together and kind of get over those challenges together.
Yeah, and that situation, I know the athlete that you're talking about, that situation was handled with grace, right? And I think it's just the reality of the humanness of this world. I mean, there was a time where I wanted to quit, but I think it was a very reactionary thought, which is what happens a lot of time. Is it's a reactionary thought, or it stemmed from maybe poor experience. And so we take responsibility at Extreme to make sure that we provide an experience that does allow athletes to flourish, and it doesn't. Maybe it isn't a sport that's theirs to continue forever, but we want to make sure that we provide that environment for them to have the opportunity to. And I think burnout it's a sad word to hear, for us to hear our kids quitting or whatever. And so it's a huge responsibility on our end to make sure that we provide that experience that allows them to love the game.
Yeah. We've done a couple different times. We've done kind of like a my why exercise for athletes of, why are they here? Why are they playing the game? And being able to really dive deep into what that means for them. And so actually I have done one as a coach. And so part of my why was writing in there about athletes who feel maybe that time that they want to quit, being able to be there for them. Kind of just like my own background story of whenever I was in college, I had somebody really close to me pass away, and it led to me feeling like I wanted to quit. I didn't want to be anywhere near the field. I didn't want to play anymore, and ultimately led to me going to talk to my coach and tell her that I didn't want to play anymore. And we didn't have a super great relationship, so it was kind of like she just let me go. And so I never want to be the coach that doesn't at least have a conversation or be able to talk through what that is, which means I got to have a relationship with the kid first. And so, being able to write that in my why and now experience that, I think is just another reason that I really believe burnout's avoidable whenever you have the relationships in place for that.
Absolutely. So that's section number 2. So we had our first section, dinner table conversations, 3 questions. We had on 2 hot takes, and then the third and final is our Q&A. So one Q&A this week's is a hot button. We just came out of winter season, and the question is around winter indoor tournaments. So what is our stance on those events?
So many layers to indoor tournaments. I think it's just become kind of the norm. We did write a disclaimer on the fact that it's not always the case, but we do feel like indoor tournaments, there's a time and place for those, as far as if there's a specific recruiting thing, or we've had teams playing them before that it came down to just qualifying for something come that summer. So that's kind of our disclaimer. But holistically, we really want our indoor time or our off-season time to be about development. And so taking kids out of that development time and saying like, okay, now you're going to go compete for a weekend and then, oh, we're going to pop right back into development time. It's a confusing place for athletes, but it's also very difficult for their journey to continue of that development. So we can't just pop kids out and in of competition and say like, oh, go do this at 100%, but now we're going to go back down into breakdown mode throughout the week as we're working back towards competition mode again. So there's a true trajectory that we have around our off-season development, and whenever we have indoor tournaments kind of plop down in the middle of those, it makes that development really hard. I think specifically from a pitching standpoint, and this may be more specific to the softball pitching side, but the trajectory that we have there is we're ramping athletes up based on kind of just where they're at inside of whether it's velocity, break, different things that we're kind of working towards. And so now we're like, oh, okay, go play and pitch 100% for 120 pitches in a game is really a detriment to just what they're trying to do inside of the bullpen, kind of ramping their way up to that. So I think there's so many examples of it, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that we want development to be the main priority in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think that relates to baseball pitchers too. And I think we hear a lot of people say like, oh, I just want to get them on the field to see where they're at and see what we need to work on. And while that seems right and it's a good intention, I think that are you trying to play your best ball in April? Like, I'm not, right? I'm not trying to play my best ball in April. I'm trying to get our team to play our best ball at the end of the year, in July, right? I mean, then really, in the bigger scope, I'm trying to just have my athletes develop, right? It's not even, yes, it's about the season and getting them to grow as a group, but ultimately, like, we're on a team, individuals on a team. And so we're trying to, and the goal is that these athletes can become better individuals through this experience. And so I think, yes, you can see where your kids are at in that environment, but I also think you could do that in March outside, right? You could wait a couple weeks, a month or whatever, and allow yourself to continue through that development season and then get outside and do a friendly game, do a friendly tournament, whatever it is, friendly, scrimmage against an internal team of some sort to get the same concept, but not lose out, not have to kind of skip between the development season and a winter indoor tournament. And never mind the fact that winter indoor tournaments, you usually have very small time limits because you are one, maybe two fields at these places. And so they're trying to scrummage as much as they can into a small period of time, which is usually maybe Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, because it's during school year. And then it's just, the whole experience between time limits and then, a lot of these places are not necessarily local. And so you're having to travel and potentially missing athletes because they're in other sports or they have school functions or whatever. And so we see a lot of teams scrambling to find pickup players for a tournament in January. And it's like, is that really worth it? And I think that's where we just really value the development side. And yes, it may seem like we can't get that competitive side in here, but talk a little bit about how we maybe can do that in a controlled setting versus maybe going to spend, and that's the other thing, is it's an investment to go to a tournament. So
yeah, I think there's definitely a healthy way to ramp up towards that, competition or the live side of things. And so most recently, our high schoolers, they've been participating in live at-bats. We've done it for the last 3 weeks before they went on to their high school season, and we were able to control kind of pitch counts. We were able to have conversations and reflections and work through the side of development when it comes to how do we on-ramp this appropriately. And I thought that our athletes did a really great job with that, and being able to see that there's a lot of positives to stay in a training environment and bring in kind of that compete mode to it and be able to marry those two things together. And then ultimately, I think they're set up for the best success going into their spring seasons.
Yeah, live ABs in a controlled environment has been really successful for us. So that's a wrap, I think. That's a wrap. So thanks for sharing a deep dive on this initiative. It's vulnerable, it's bold, it's unique, it's different, it's educational, but our families will value it, and we're excited for hopefully more to come in the future. If you're interested in learning more about the Extreme Experience, plug into our social media channels. We have a lot of content coming through there. Obviously, listen to our previous episodes on this podcast or future, and then don't hesitate to reach out to Jess. Thanks for listening to Hardball Talks. Please subscribe to catch the upcoming episodes.